marching through the Dhamma at the kind of record speed that was done in the time of the Buddha.
Sure.
Okay, this can be done if we pay close attention to it. That I will admit that I dallied for years, mostly because I didn't understand how easy it was. And yet Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was there talking about it. And it finally sunk in. So here's the point. Once it sinks in and you get it, then the rest of the path is fairly easy. The question is, can you get it now? Are you going to wait 25 years? Are you going to be an old man like I was before you decide that you can, in fact, take control of your life? And that what's a little coronavirus? Or what's a little shot? Okay. But what happens is, there's another example of this. In fact, let me give you this example because it's in almost always it's exactly the same thing. A student says that he was watching a YouTube video, and the thought occurred to him that he ought to be meditating. And then he said to himself, "Oh, but I want to watch the video." And then the thought again is, "Oh, you ought to be meditating." And then the thought is, "No, I want to watch the video." And now he's got this dialogue going that rots
I know
really
that whole thing. Yep, I know it very well.
right into a pity party.
Yep, and I don't like it.
Okay, well, the thing to do then is just to wake up to it with the, this is kind of an old joke. It's a personal joke. Years ago, there was advertisements on television for, let us say, a tomato juice cocktail that was called V8.
I know it.
You know about V8 juice?
I do. I know all the different juices. My dad was a grocer, so I know all the different juices.
For a
Yeah.
while, they were running an ad that had to do with someone was drinking something else, and then he saw someone drinking V8, and he would do this. I could have had a V8. Do you remember that part of their commercials? I could have had a V8.
I don't, but that doesn't surprise me. V8 tastes terrible, by the way. I don't know why anyone would want that, except in a cocktail with a,
Let's
margarita.
not go there, but let's do go to the fact that back in the 1980s, there were a number of computer manufacturers that were doing what they could to go directly into competition with IBM's mainframe, who just wound up getting sued and almost was put out of business. They were fined $600 million in a court suit for IBM. And then IBM went after Amdahl also. Amdahl had big mainframes that were basically a knockoff. I was involved with a government project at that time when I think it was the Reagan building, way out in Redford, Massachusetts, or in Redford, Virginia, and that they had this huge computer system, big Amdahl. About like the whole ground floor was nothing but computers, and most of that was modem banks.
Hmm.
Okay. And the joke was that we could have had a V8 because it was an Amdahl V8. That was the name of their product. But that kind of stuck with me about, darn it, wake up. You know, we could have had a V8.
Sure.
All right. So this is the kind of thing that we need to think about is that I could have had a pity party. Okay. Or let's wake up here. And that's the kind of thing that begins to occur when we recognize that there is a major distinction between anapanasati, which is mindfulness of breathing, versus this thing called meditation, which has gotten itself as a meme into Western mentality.
Sure.
Okay. So even you and even the guy who was on YouTube, when they think about meditation, I should be meditating. That means that they've got to stop what is happening, turn off the computer, go to another room, get onto a particular cushion, because that's the cushion that is labeled already mentally as the meditation cushion in the meditation place. And so we wind up with a lot of formality or rites, rules, and rituals around meditation. In fact, every meditation retreat seems to be more ritual than meditation, with clocks and candles and bells and incense and statuary and the whole 9 yards. But if we stop thinking about meditation in that sense and start thinking about anapani in the sense of remembering to take a deep breath, that's all it means.
Anapani or anapanasati?
Anapana is in breath and out breath, and sati is to remember. That's all it is. So here you are having your pity party, and if you remember with the thought of I should be meditating, then the response would be immediately, I am.
Hmm.
Doing it now, because we remembered. But instead, you didn't remember to take a deep breath. What you remembered was a rule. You ought to be meditating. That comes right out of the parent ego state. It's an old tape that we played. In fact, that was the thing that we talked about it in the 1970s. Now we could just say you're just playing an audio file with FILE as
Sure.
opposed to an audio file with other spelling. So, uh, in a way, you're nothing but just a tape recorder, just a box, just a machine that's got a tape head on it and plays back what's on that tape. And that's all we do. We just play these old tapes over and over and over again. And the tape
Yep.
recorder doesn't like them. Or
Right.
actually, tape playback machine doesn't like these audios that we keep playing back. Because you didn't like it when you said you ought to be meditating. You didn't want to do that.
Right.
And so you get into an internal dialogue between the parent ego state, thou shalt meditate, and the child ego state, which doesn't have language, doesn't speak in language. It's too primitive for language, but it does have a language of emotion or feelings, not words. And the emotion or the feeling that is response to, you ought to be meditating, could be expressed in the words of, oh, hell no, I can't do that now. All right, it's
Sure.
kind of a feeling response, but it's a rejection and also don't make me do it. And so we begin to appeal to that parent inside to let me by, let me get away with it. And so we wound up in this pity party. That's a really, I don't know when that phrase came up, but I've heard it since the 70s, and it just
It's a
fits.
great phrase. Yep.
It really, really fits. Because we enjoy that pity party, it's got value to it. You know, here's an example of what I'm talking about. How many pity parties on planet Earth do you think will happen in the next 24 hours?
Well, there's 7.5 billion people, and let's say they each have 10 per day, maybe 20, 50, so you'll have, billions and billions,
You're getting the point. Why do
yeah,
you think there are so many pity parties? Because there's some kind of value in there. What is the value then of a pity party? Okay, the Buddha talks about it using the word um, gratification, that there is some gratification in the things that we do, and so we continue to do them. The gratification is, in fact, the fuel that keeps the habit going. And so every time we get a little bit of gratification, we'll do that habit again, that reinstalls it again, grinds it in deeper, cuts a rut in a dirt road, so to speak, causing potholes and whatnot. But we get gratification by going down that road. Because we keep going down that road, we wear it in. Okay. And so we have to begin to recognize that that gratification also has dangers in it. That pity parties do have gratification, but they have enormous dangers. And that when people can't see that, they will take the little bit of gratification and don't see the enormous danger that they're in. Like, for instance, the danger of let's have another pity party and let's have another one and let's have another one. Let's spend our day in pity party when the option would
Right.
have been, I could have had a V8.
Right.
I could,
Which I,
I could
yep.
can wake up to this. So this is the whole story about sati as to why it's got a certain kind of power or strength to it that needs to be developed. Okay, that actually it seems that sati has three aspects to be developed. One is how often it occurs. Number two is how frequently, once we've got it going, can it keep, how quick? So how often, how quick, and also how powerful or how strong it is. I think I mentioned to you before about waking up and getting out of bed in the morning, that the first thing we do is we wake up, we don't get out of bed.
Right.
Think about having that shot and then having the thought, I ought to meditate, is like the thought of once you wake up in the morning, you ought to get out of bed, and then you don't.
Right.
Yeah,
And I
we
feel like
don't.
so much of my life is spent that way. I mean, another area like this is, I recently lost my job, right?
Hmm.
And I've really enjoyed being unemployed. I have just loved it. I mean, you know, it's been about a month, a little over a month, and they paid me for the whole month, So I didn't have to file for unemployment right away or anything, and I'm going to file, tomorrow is the plan because that month just ended on Friday. And I've really just loved it. I mean, I've been going into the Dhamma practice. I've been reading, and I've went to
Hmm.
ceremonies, spending time with friends, time with my dog. It's really given me a lot of space to do a lot of really nice things, including our chats, which I've very much enjoyed and gotten a lot out of. And thank you for that. Um, and the Dhamma practice that I do in conjunction with our chats and outside, of course. I think having this space to be unemployed has really allowed me to dive, a lot deeper in this stuff than I might have been inclined,
The
you
phrase that
know.
we have in English is get away from it all.
Yeah, and it's
Okay.
been great. And yet I also know, like I should be applying for jobs. I do have bills to pay and that sort of thing. And I'll tell myself, Robert, you need to apply for a job today. And then I just won't do it because I just don't want to do it. Um, and it's been a
Well,
big internal
that's the
conflict.
that's the
Yeah.
parent and the child dialogue that gets
Yes.
started when we're children. Mom tells us to do something, and the child inside doesn't want to do it.
Yes. And all the
Now,
time. That's one of my biggest states that comes up again and again. So you need to
mm,
work out. You need to do this. You need to do that. And then I'll do it eventually often, but I will put things off, put things off. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it.
you don't
Even
want to
things I
do it.
really like. Like even things I really like meditation. I have a very joyful sits whenever I sit. Yet I still enter in that parent-child thing. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear more about You mentioned there's something gratifying about it, but it's also great danger. So anyway, please take it away. I just love
Well,
to hear your
let's
thoughts on all of
let's
this. So,
go let's go back then to that internal dialogue. Um, the Buddha knew about it. Freud knew about it. The ancient Greeks knew about it, and Adler and Jung picked up on it, and Eric Berne made a great big deal out of it. This idea that each human being, as a human being, not like most animals, the human being actually has three brains or three minds, and that they are often in conflict with each other. And that the primary part of the Buddha's teaching that seems quite logical in that is that to get these three parts of the brain unified so that they're working together as a team rather than each one of them working individually selfishly. All right. And so these three parts of the brain, Freud defined as ego, superego, and id. Now, for some reason or another, our language has gotten everything backwards in the sense that we talk about ego is a bad thing. We talk about egoism, egotistical, and all of that kind of stuff. But that language has to do with the id, not the ego. That in fact, the right word to say would be id-tistical rather than egotistical.
sure.
Okay. Or id-centric rather than egocentric. Um, the id is referred to by Eric Berne as the child ego state, and that neuroscience will put it as the posterior part of the brain. This back in here, it's also called the reptilian brain. This reptilian brain, like most really primitive animals, like crocodiles and whatever, they don't have um, the language the way that dogs do. Dogs have a very, very sophisticated language.
They do.
Various barks, various postures, all kinds of attitudes and things like that. To where alligators, they don't have much language. They know how to attack and they know how to escape, and that's about their entire vocabulary.
I've always really liked alligators for some reason.
Pardon?
I've always really liked alligators for some reason.
Well,
I just think they're
you've
really
got the
cool.
same anatomy. Anything that an alligator can do, you do that with that part of your brain. Alligators can swim, you can swim. Alligators can crawl, you can crawl. Alligators can wiggle their tail, you can wiggle your tail. Alligators can see, you can see. Alligators have hearts that pump something or another, and so do you. All of that kind of stuff. They even breathe. So do we. So all of that kind of stuff that the alligator can do, we can do with that primitive part of the brain. But one of the things that that part of the brain cannot do is speak in language. And so it speaks in emotion. And so the pity party basically winds up with, you want to do this, I don't want to do it. But that is expressed in a feeling. And that feeling is an feeling or a feeling, something like that. But the
Sure.
answer is generally no.
Right. It's like a
And
sinking feeling. Like there's like
a
a
sinking.
sinking feeling in my gut almost, and it's like, you have to apply for a job or whatever is coming from my mind. It's my mind saying that. And then there's just like a feeling that arises of just like in my gut, a sinking feeling of, oh, God, I don't want to do that right now, And it's not expressed in words, like you said, exactly like you said. It's like just a feeling I don't want to do it, and then I just don't do it. I just continue with whatever activity I was doing.
actually, no, more than likely what will happen is it comes again. You ought to go do that.
It does come again, yes.
And then another one, oh, I don't want to do it, is the sense of feeling.
And then
Okay. That's in fact, mhm.
either I get distracted by the thing I'm doing, or I do it at some point, but I often don't do it until the adrenaline comes in right when it needs to be done.
Well, actually, what we're getting it up to is this pity party that we're using a label for. Another way that the Buddha talks about it is the woeful state of being an animal. The pity
Hmm.
party is actually the Buddha's understanding of an animal in the sense that the animal does what it's told to do reluctantly.
Hmm.
So eventually you'll tell yourself you've got to go get a job, and so you'll go out looking for one, but you'll do it half heartedly and you won't be successful at it. Employers want people who want the job, and right now you don't want one.
I really don't. I'd be much more content just go out to my mom's in nature and walk my dog every day. Like,
Guess what? I
I don't
think
want.
that people in the United States are waking up to this. I remember, in fact, about a year ago that I had a long conversation with Willie about this. In fact, more than one person we talked about, in the sense of, isn't it marvelous? COVID 19 is planet Earth's message to humanity: slow down, you move too fast.
No kidding. That's the
Okay.
truth.
That the humans were just polluting the planet, and so planet Earth comes up with COVID, and what happened? All of the aircraft comes right out of the air, and aircraft are the major problem. You see, an automobile exhaust is at most a foot or two off the ground, or on a big truck at most 10 or 20 feet off the ground, putting out all that heavy pollution. But that means for the car's exhaust, it only has to fall about a foot, and there it is. It's on the ground. If you've got a jet plane at 40,000 feet putting out that same stuff, how long does that stuff that's being put out by that jet plane hit the ground? Sometimes it's going to take 100 years. And so getting that aircraft out of the air, that was a good thing. And the I think the atmosphere is already being cleaned up. Now we're getting the jets back, but for a year or so, no jets. But the bigger issue is not only are the jets out of the air for a while, people are at home. You see, their whole lives, from the time they were little kids, they've been into, you got to go to work, you got to go to school, you got to go, you got to go, you got to go.
Right.
And that you got to go is out of that parent. And then people say, I don't want to. And then they say, you got to go. I don't want to. You got to go. Okay, I'll go, but I don't want to. And so this is that animal state. And so we have now a whole nation or a whole planet full of humans acting like animals, doing work they were told to do that they really don't have to do if they don't want to do it, if they would wake up. And here you are, just like so many people, that the Republicans and the big business and whatnot are screaming right now because nobody wants to go back to work. And you know
Right.
what I have to say about that? Deep inside, that little child is saying, ha 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 ha. Dhamma is
Yeah.
happening when people don't want to go back to work.
Well, it's so funny because, like I was talking with a friend about this the other day, and I've lived in New York now for 5 years. This is a very expensive place to live. It's just the cost of living and the food, all this stuff, and I'm now feeling like, I think the Dhamma practice is a big contributor to this, and also the plant medicine stuff I've been doing and various other things, but the Dhamma's been a really big part of it for sure. Is just like I don't feel like this type A competitive person anymore. I just want to keep not working and chilling, and I'm surrounded by all these type A competitive people all the time. and it's just feeling more and more like it's not quite my crowd. And I love
Hmm.
my friends. My friends are good people, but in terms of the average person I meet, it's this, there's this whole competition thing, and I just want to sit out of that. That's how I feel, but I'd
Well, you're
created a
waking up.
whole, yeah, but I'd created a whole personality around being this competitive type A person, and now I don't feel like I sync up with that personality anymore. But it's how so many people have known me for so long, and I went to, an Ivy League school and all of this, and I just don't feel like you know, like that's my thing anymore. It's a really weird thing. It's
It
like
happens.
a snake shedding its skin. I don't know how else
Hmm.
to, or an
It,
alligator shedding its skin because I like those more.
a
Yeah,
lot of people train in heavy detail, getting advanced degrees and all kinds of stuff, and then they just chuck it in. They figure out that's not what I want to do. Um, I have come to understand that for some reason or another, those people who are really deeply into math, computer science, economics, and that kind of stuff, they get really drawn to the Dhamma.
that's interesting.
And
Yep.
that's why you find actually not just on the internet and in other places, you find a lot of technology being put into the Dhamma because of all of these people who have all of this technical expertise are now doing Poly on GitHub rather than working for JP Morgan.
Hmm.
That's just the way that we do, that we figure out that there's better things to do with our time than have this internal dialogue, this pity party of you ought to go to do this. You're an alpha. You got to go do this. Oh, I don't want to, but you got to go do this. Okay, that in fact that alpha is a very, very strong super ego.
Sure.
Okay, because we've got a lot of rules, we've got a lot of shoulds, we've got a lot of stuff to do, and um, that is, let us say, such a strong thing that we begin to, over our lifetimes, do what we're told to do, though we don't want to do it. This is
Right.
that wolf state of being an animal, of doing what you're told to do without wanting to do it. I've got several examples. One is the horse that plows his own pasture. You got this beautiful horse out there in this beautiful pasture, and he's having a ball. And the farmer buys that piece of land and the horse, and he puts a plow on the horse and makes the horse plow up his own pasture. And what does the horse get out of that? Hay. Now, how
Yeah.
many times does that happen? That is what we call the Industrial Revolution, or that's what we call capitalism. Capitalism is someone else, Mr. Big Guy, putting these people to work. They don't really want to do it, but they do it anyway because they were told to do it. And then he gets the benefit. The big guy gets the benefit.
Right.
Our whole society is built on that. And that everybody is invited. Oh, well, if you want to be the big guy, you got to climb all over a whole bunch of other big guys to get to the top. And when you get on top, then you're going to have a whole bunch of big guys grabbing a hold to your belt and your pants trying to pull you back down. But that's life. Enjoy. Only nobody enjoys that life. And it's just a big pile of humans trying to struggle to get to the top, stepping on this guy's face, and the next moment your own face is getting stepped on. And we think that this is the right way to live because we have this very strong parent ego state, this super ego in there saying, go do this, go do that, you got to do this, you got to do that. And we picked that stuff up from when we were kids, and we picked it up from the adults that tell this to kids, the real kids, because when they're not telling it to their own kids, they're telling it to the kid inside their own mind anyway.
Right.
Okay, so part of what we need to do then is to have sati to wake up, not just to say to wake up, oh, you should be meditating and then go meditate. Start waking up to those shoulds, those jobs you give yourself to do, things that have to be done, so that you recognize that what we really need to do is get yourself up to doing the job. And if you don't get yourself up to doing the job, then don't do it. What do I mean now by getting this yourself up to the job? Let's use the example of going for employment, or actually out looking for a job is a job to do. In fact, many
Yeah.
people will say the worst job I've ever had was out looking for work. And so if you want to give yourself that job of going out and looking for work, the question is, are you going to be successful at it, or are you going to be a failure at it? If you go looking for jobs and you don't want a job, that's going to be written all over your application. It's going to be written all over your face, and it's going to be written all over your behind as they kick you out the door.
I'm pretty good at faking it.
Don't fake it.
Yeah.
If you're going to fake it at home while you're having a pity party.
Well, I'll tell you this. Here's a funny story. So that was kind of how I got my last job, is I faked my way in, essentially. I mean, I wasn't deceptive about who I was or anything like that, but I mean, I had the interview, and, and I just said, this would be a great opportunity. I'm really excited about this, and all of this. And I said all I needed to say, and I did it with a big smile on my face, and I just, went all in with that, because I know how to do that. And the truth be told, I was not a good fit for this company, and that's why I didn't stay there, you know. But, but what was funny about it is inside that company, everyone was faking everything all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bunch of fakers, you know, and people kissing ass and, playing politics and all of this, and I'm not like that ultimately. Like I can do that a little
That was the
bit.
pile that I was talking about, in fact,
Yeah.
of climbing uh, that
Yes,
human pyramid.
I'm not like that. I'm an authentic like I'll just tell you what I think, this and that. I'll be nice and polite, in a certain circumstance, in certain circumstances, of
I
course,
got
but
you. I got you.
yeah,
You can fake it. Okay.
yes, I
Let's
can do
not.
it fine, but
Okay.
not my
Because you
whole life
can fool,
is
you
not going to be
might
that
be
way.
able to fool an employer for a while. The way that you could say it is, this comes from Abraham Lincoln. He said that you can fool some of the people some of the time, and you can fool all of the people. Wait a minute, you can fool all the people some of the time, and you can fool some of the people all the time, but you can't fool everybody all the time.
Right,
Okay. Basically, we can turn that around to saying you might be able to fool your employer, but you can't fake it for yourself. You're going to have that pity party. You know you're having that
right,
pity party. Even though you're lying to yourself about the pity party, you're still having that pity party. You don't want to be here.
right,
Even though you're telling the employer you want to be here, the reality is that you don't. Okay.
right,
Now here's the whole point is that we have choices, and that we make choices based up, based upon the criteria of productivity.
right,
Okay, and that the whole nation is like that by looking for the gross national product,
right.
productivity. Okay, product.
Yes,
Bhutan has a completely different
I've heard
government
about this. Yeah,
perspective,
yes, the
and
gross
and
national happiness. Yeah.
the gross national happiness. Well, you have to understand that Bhutan is a Buddhist country.
Yes, it's a beautiful
Okay. At least
idea.
they make
Yep.
point to where you could say that in Thailand, that's kind of the same thing. Just getting along and enjoying one's life is more important than making a killing.
Yes.
So you need to make that change inside more. You're already starting that. But the pity party comes from the fact that you tell yourself that you got to do something, you've got to be productive. Those tapes are still running.
Right. Well,
So you
yes,
need to
and
start changing the tapes. Okay, here's the whole point about the practice of anapanasati is that we have to start changing those tapes from that unwholesome stuff of get the job done no matter how you feel into the nurturing thoughts of how you feel is much more important than whether the job gets done or not. Now, here's the point that's really important. Bhikkhu pounds on this, especially in his book on the void mind. And that is that do whatever that, I won't use the Bible phrase, whatever your hands find to do, but rather whatever you are going to do, enjoy it.
right.
Do what you're going to do with a mind that's void of the hindrances.
Hmm.
Most people will go around doing because they're supposed to do it. They've been told to do it by their superego, which is nothing but a bunch of old tapes from the past. But when
Right.
people are living in the present moment and those old tapes come up, we should see those tapes with the understanding of we can change those tapes from you ought to go do something into aren't you enjoying this moment?
Hmm.
Okay. Because if you can get yourself into a state of enjoyment, then you can do anything that you want to do.
Hmm.
For instance, going to look for a job for most people is work. And you're saying that, yeah, it is, but I can fake it. And the response to that is, yes, now we're having two lies going on,
Yep. Lie to myself and lie to the employer.
right? Not only in that, but you're going out to look for work, which you don't want to do. And now you're putting on a pretty face so that you can get the job you don't want.
Right.
Okay.
And
This is
yeah.
what we mean by being a crowd inside, that we're not unified. We need to get completely whole and unified, or another way of saying it is get the parent and the child on the same page. And the way to do that is by changing the parent, change the tapes, rather than changing the DNA, which is a little bit more difficult to change.
Have you heard about CRISPR?
Who?
CRISPR.
Chutzpah?
CRISPR. CRISPR.
Chris,
CRISPR. It's a new technology that allows you to actually change a genome, to change a strand of DNA, and it came out.
let's not go there. You're off
Okay.
base. Okay.
They haven't applied it to humans yet, though, so we don't need to. Actually, they
You
did.
have not scheduled your surgery for that kind of stuff yet, so let's stay with what we can do.
Okay, that'd be another interesting. Maybe when we don't have anything else to talk about someday in 5 years or something, we'll talk about whether or not it'd be a good idea to alter the genome so everyone would be enlightened. That could be a fun topic,
We are
but
already doing that.
yeah.
We are already doing that. Society is changing for the better. Uh, Martin Luther King spoke about it when he
Yeah.
talks about the arc of the moral universe bends or inclines towards justice. Basically, what he's actually
Yes.
speaking about is that if it happens on an individual level, in the sense of education, if someone has absolutely no education, um, regardless of what society they're in, they're at the lowest part of it. People who have good educations have a better chance of having a better life,
Yes.
which means that they have the right kind of education, then they can have a good life. So it really has a lot to do with education, the right kind of education. And as humanity is getting more educated, we're going in the direction of having a better society, technology. As
Yes.
the Buddha Dhamma gets more known, the number of people who live according to the Dhamma will grow. And that's a good thing over time. And they will also have implants and other things like that. We don't have to worry about the future because we can't change that anyway. But we can see the direction that things are headed, and we can take a sigh of relief. Oh, well, at least my great grandchildren can get an implant, and look at all the work I've had to do with this damn anapanasati stuff.
Right. It's actually funny. I had dinner with a friend today, and I was telling him about this article I read about how the Eisenhower administration reacted to the 1957 Asian flu. And the flu was actually very similar to COVID. It had about the same mortality rate. And you know what the Eisenhower administration did?
I don't
No,
care.
nothing. They did nothing. They spent about $25 million, which is a drop in the bucket, and they didn't do any lockdown. They did nothing. And it goes to show our complete blown out of proportion reaction to the pandemic is a sign of one, low stoicism, two, low risk tolerance, and three, people. I mean, the low risk tolerance is a really big thing, but also three, the positive sign is people really caring about the health of other human beings. Which that's a very positive thing. In my opinion. So whereas
It
back
depends
then,
upon which political party you're in, then, I suppose. But in the time of Eisenhower, the Republicans didn't give a flying rat's ass about what happens to people. And guess what? That's how the Republican Party is today. There are certain things that have changed about the political party, but one thing about money, money don't care so long as money keeps money.
sure, but also back then, we don't need to go off on this, but
Please, let's not. Let's get back to
all
parent
right,
ego state
all
because
right, yes,
that's something
please,
of value. What
yes,
happened with Eisenhower may be interesting, but it's not going to help you get a job
it, it's not, or to do anything. Yeah,
or
let's
to do
leave that,
anything at all.
leave
So
that in the
let's
past. Yep.
so let's go to the point that um, we can change those tapes, but we have to do it every time the tape starts playing. In other words, we can't just, let us say, for instance, of looking at cassette tapes, and you've got a whole wall full of cassette tapes of things that you've been told throughout your life. The thing to do is to not try to burn down that wall of tapes, but rather to take this tape out of the recorder. What tape is that? The one that's playing right now. That's the tape that needs to be stopped. Not the whole wall full of tapes, but just this one. This is a new way of thinking that it's just
Mm,
this thought. This thought that says you ought to meditate or you should go get a job. That tape is the one that needs to be addressed. And the way to address it is to recognize that telling you something to do that you don't want to do is unwholesome, that you're already in a state of resisting it. That in fact, we get ourselves, um, some people have it worse than others, but everybody has the same things. We all have abandonment issues. We all have authority issues. We don't have to be rebel without a cause or easy rider to be a rebel. Everyone rebels. But the one that we rebel most to is the parent ego state in our own mind. That's the pity party, is the rebellion against what we're told to do that we don't want to do. Basically, this is back to the issue of being critical, which is back then to the story of Adam and Eve in the Bible. They ate of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, which basically means that Adam looks at Eve and he says, "Your feet are good, but your tits are evil." Okay, this is, or maybe it's the other way around, but it doesn't matter. The point is that when we start judging, we destroy our own paradise. And here you have a paradise inside your own mind, lolling around, and everything is good. And then that parent, that super ego, that snake with an apple comes up and says, "Aha, why don't you go do this? Why don't you see this is bad and that's good and you need to go get a job?" Okay, that's that parent ego state that is giving orders, is critical. It's making judgments of this is good and this is bad, leaving the child then to, with that judgment of what's good and what's bad, to like it or not like it. And so when there is work to be done, the child is naturally going to say, "No, I don't want to do that." If we can change the concept, Eric Berne talked about this, and that is that parent can be retrained to do a more natural parenting thing. For example of that would be nurturing the child rather than critical of the child. When a new infant is born, mom is always very, very nurturing of her baby. It's only when the child gets to about 5 or 6 that the society influenced the mom enough to where the mom now becomes critical with her child rather than nurturing. And so that happens with each one of us in a very, very deep sense, in an early sense of environment. We know nurturing, but now we have been robbed of it because now we have the parent ego state that we're picking up from our own parents that's critical. The child inside craves nurturing, and all we get out of that part of our mind is criticism, in the sense that, "Oh no, you do not deserve nurturing now, not until you do your homework,
Right.
not until you finish this job. You can be happy after you go get new employment. You got to go get a job, then you can be happy."
It's funny because this is one of the reasons that I go to the ceremonies is because everyone is so nice all the time and nurturing and kind. People aren't like that in daily life. It's you have to do this, you have to do that, this protocol,
So are
that
you going to
protocol.
start to be nurturing to yourself now? Never mind what's happening out in the world. Now that you're unemployed and at home and kind of in seclusion, you can get away from that critical world and
Right,
start nurturing yourself.
right.
And so when thoughts of job comes up, "Oh, you ought to go apply for the job." Now the answer can be, "Wow, I can get myself up to being feeling really good, and then I'll go get a job."
Sure.
Okay. This is what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa is talking about. You can do whatever you want to do. Just make sure that the mind is void of the hindrances, which is this void of being critical of yourself. So, and talk to students about this often. Let us say that the issue is that you've got to write an email. I don't know who it's to or what it's for. It can be family, it can be business, it can be a lawyer, but you got to write this email. At least you told yourself that you've got to write it, but you don't want to write it.
Sure.
Okay. So now that you don't want to
Happened to
write,
me many times.
and so
Yep.
many people, what they'll do is they'll write the email anyway because it needs to be written.
Right.
And damned how you feel about it, go write that email. right? That's exactly how we're trained. The email is more important than the way you feel. You've got to get that email done, and it doesn't matter how you feel about it. Well, if you go with that attitude to write that email, I bet it's not going to be your best email. But
No.
if you go to that email with hot dog, I've got this wired. I know exactly what we're going to say with this one. Hot dog, I'm ready for this thing.
Right.
With that attitude, you'll probably write a better email and you'll actually enjoy writing it.
Right.
So, why then do we, in our society, teach our children to get the job done and feel bad and do a mediocre job? Why can't we teach our children to get your act together? Get yourself up, get yourself in a really great mood, and then do what you want to do.
It's a great question. You know, I think
Okay.
we're not smart enough to do that.
Well, there is sati. Yes, you are smart enough to do that if you would remember to do it.
In our own personal lives, yes, but at a society-wide level.
You can't fix society.
Right.
Look how many people have tried and look how many people have failed.
Right. You know, it's funny,
There are,
Jacobs.
in fact,
Yeah.
great organizations with a whole lot of equipment that make sure that you will fail at that. They have crosses and nails and poisons of hemlock and rings that have uh, cyanide. And I mean, there's just all kinds of reasons why people will make sure that you fail at
You know, you know what would be funny
trying to
is if
fix
you
society.
incognito tried to join one of these organizations and then blew it up from the inside with the Dhamma. You know, that would be a fun, you know, like movie or something if you did that.
Um, the point I would say is that why bother?
Hmm. Because maybe
What
you could help a
value
lot of
is?
people.
Why do you want to help an awful lot of people when those awful lot of people don't want help?
Yeah, they don't want the help, I guess. So why
Right,
give
so
it to
you're
them?
actually giving them a gift that they really don't want.
Right.
Why don't we give gifts to people who want these gifts instead?
Good. It's a good point. I wish they would have said that to all the Christian missionaries over the generations, you know. But yeah, so
Isn't that interesting then that if that's the case, then blowing up the let us say the business that you're talking about from the inside is exactly what the Christian missionaries are trying to do in the tribal village.
yes, in a
I
sense.
don't
And
think that they were as successful as they wanted to be.
well, the most successful ones were the ones that also brought guns, and that's not a possibility for a Dhamma dude, you know.
They, all right. So this is something that's very difficult for most Westerners who have been uh, trained about society. I guess you could say the same thing would be true about in China, those who have been raised in Confucianism. But the whole point is that if you let us say that there are 7 billion human brains that are malfunctioning.
Right.
Where does one start? With the one that's closest by. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So if we work at it from that perspective, then if you can get one human brain straightened out, then that's a success.
Right. Sorry, my dog was just making a whole racket over there.
You really do have this grandiosity that all the Dhamma is so great. Wouldn't it be nice if everybody had it? The answer is no, it wouldn't. No, we have to understand that. Here's another example of that, by the way. What would it be like if every university had only one PhD program, and that was in nuclear physics? What would it be like if every school planned on every student when they graduated for a bachelor's degree was then going to get their PhD in nuclear physics? What kind of class settings would there be? No arts.
Yep, it'd be monotonous, and there might be too much nuclear stuff all over the place.
Okay.
It's yeah.
Now let's do it another way. What if every university in the United States or every university in the world had only one PhD program, and that was in, let us say, evangelical uh, Bible study?
Oh, that'd be awful.
Okay. How about it if everybody became a medical doctor? Everybody. The
That
only classes that two students could take starting in first grade was anatomy, all the way up, and that's the only thing that they studied.
that would be an improvement on the other two scenarios, but it
Guess what?
still
There
would
would be
be
no medical equipment because the medical equipment
right,
requires the technicians. There would have
right, and
been
there.
no MRIs. There would have been no stethoscopes, even. There would
Well,
just been.
you know what I would like though is if everyone got a PhD in poetry. That I think that would be a nice world to live in. What do you think?
I would go so far as to say that that was something that was quite common in the time of the Buddha. That the Pali language lends itself to poetry quite well, and a
Hmm.
lot of the Dhamma is stated poetically.
Hmm.
Okay, so, um, however, uh, what would New York City look like if everybody in New York was a poet and there was no trash collection, there were no city water, there was no electric, there was no Edison. Everybody at Edison was busy. They don't care about the generators. They're sitting there at their desk writing poetry. And when the lights go out, they get a candle, except that there's no candle because the people who used to make candles are now doing poetry.
Well, it'd be a real kick in the pants. That's what it would be.
Okay. So now that you're getting the point that, in fact, there is a use and a value for complexity.
Hmm. Yep.
The better question to ask is about wholesome versus unwholesome, as opposed to everybody doing the same thing.
Sure.
That if everybody went around doing what they wanted to do happily, what kind of place would this be? What kind of politics would we have, for instance?
Much more wholesome.
People wouldn't be running for office, would they? Why? Because they're happily doing what they want to do, and nobody would run for office because nobody would want to do that. To stand in front of a bunch of people and get criticized, hauled off to jail.
Sure. So the kind of
And who's going to
going.
do the hauling to jail if everybody's just interested in doing wholesome things?
Good question. So
Okay. So let's not worry about what we can do with society. So it's not our business to fix society. Your business is to fix your own mind.
sure. So a quick, comment. So I think one area of resistance in my practice, and this gets back to my earlier point about feeling like my identity is changing, um, is you know
It
it's not
always
just
was. You just didn't know it.
yeah, but like changing perhaps at a little faster pace. Perhaps we'll put it that way, right? Um, it
Time
is
flies when you're having fun.
yeah, I guess,
And we
but
always kind of speed up when we're going downhill.
sure, sure. So I feel like part of the concern, for me at least, is I don't know if even concern is the right word, but part of the resistance is I'm also noticing, that like the ways in which, and this gets back to our discussion of society, um, like society wants me to be a drone, a worker drone doing the worker drone thing, you know. And I worked in management consulting, so like continuing with that, or in finance or whatever, and society wants me to feel like I always have something to prove, and I'm never safe, and I continually need to run on this treadmill to prove myself to society, and the rich, powers that be, such that I can survive on my survive and continue to exist, and have a
Mhm.
wife and kids and all of this, and you're also told you're of no value as a mate, unless you're making X amount of money and you're this, and that, And I'm finding myself caring about that much less these days, and even questioning the value of having a girlfriend, And I broke up with my girlfriend of 3 years in December, and I had another kind of it's a complicated sort of a relationship that had some romance to it, I'll put it that way, that basically wound down in January. And I have felt, you know, I've been on several dates, this and that, and I felt no real desire to truly pursue a relationship with any woman. You know, just it's like I don't want a job, I don't want a relationship. It's like society has no answer for someone that doesn't want either of those two things. It's a very weird position to be in, and I've never felt this way before. And so, yeah, but
Well,
it's
except for one thing, and that is that you could not expect society to have answers that were appropriate. Just
right.
looking at the way society operates, and society doesn't want anyone who, how to say, the song Hotel California?
Yeah, it's a good song.
Well, they say that you can check out, but you can't leave. That's society.
That's
Hotel
right.
California is the society that we live in, and they've got it set up so that you can't leave. You need them. You can check out for a little while, but you're not out of here.
Right. And it's funny because I can explain this to my friends, and they just think I'm like out to lunch or something. They.
Well, that's because they can't see what you figured out for yourself. This is another
Right.
reason why you can't fix society, is because people are not going to see things if
No,
they
they're
don't
not.
want to look at them.
Right. Right.
This is it's a really difficult lesson to understand, that we have to learn, and that is that um, we cannot fix society. You cannot get other people. They talk about it in the sense that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Well, it depends upon whether the horse is thirsty. If the horse is thirsty, he'll drink. This is the same thing is true. We can lead people to the Dhamma, but that's going to be pretty hard if they don't want to be led to the Dhamma. But they certainly can't drink the Dhamma if they don't want to.
Right.
And a lot of people already are so full of what they've been drinking already that they're either intoxicated or sluggish or whatever like that. And so they're not ready for it. So um, I would like it if we could find a way so that you get it, that your Dhamma practice has nothing to do with the world and how it relates to you. That your Dhamma practice has everything, though, to do with your own world inside your mind and how you relate to it. And when you relate to the world inside your mind well, then you will be able to relate to the outside world well. But we miss that. And this is missed in many places, even inside of Buddhism. Western Buddhism has taken a very, very sharp U-turn out of the Dhamma into Western culture, and all they have left is just the trappings without any of the real substance in there. And here is the place where they make the biggest mistake. And in fact, this is the place where you can see that they've all gone wrong. And that's with that one word, metta.
Hmm.
Everybody talks about metta this, metta that, as if it were a part of the Buddhist teachings. But it's clear that metta was not a practice of the teachings of the Buddha, that it was a practice that was taught someplace else, and that people who were interested in coming to the Buddha brought their practice of metta with them. And so that's how it got associated. It's almost like the same thing as jhana, except that jhana has some value to where metta has everything backwards. They think of metta as a practice, in fact. They call it metta meditation. And by doing that, they're saying that that metta will be the cause and something else then will be the result. If we practice metta, then the result will be something, perhaps friendship, loving kindness, which is what they call metta. And they're practicing metta. Really, what's going on is that that metta should be seen as the result of one's correct practice,
Hmm.
not the cause of something else. In
Hmm.
other words, when you have 100% loving kindness and nurturing within your own mind, then that's how you're going to deal with other people. But if you have any criticism of yourself left, then you're going to use that criticism on other people.
That's actually a really amazing point. So, one place where I've seen metta practiced is often in this kind of social justice Dharma kind of movement. And one thing I
Trying
found
to fix the
interesting
world.
about that,
Exactly.
yes,
Hmm.
yes, and one thing I found interesting about that is people that are involved in these social justice causes tend to be like pretty angry people. Um,
So they want
you
something,
know,
they want to fix it.
right? They want to fix it, and they want the world to conform to their vision of the world, and so they end up being really unpleasant people to be around. And I think their ideals are noble, not in the Buddhist sense of nobility. I mean, just like they're positive ideals, want the world to be a fair place. But these people can be just so awful to be around because they're just so self-righteous about everything all the time. And who wants to
N-
be around
Not,
someone like that?
not necessarily. Not
That's my
necessarily.
experience of these
Well,
people.
it
Yeah.
is what you're saying is true, and it's easy to see, but it's also possible, and that I can show you other examples. Hopefully, I don't have to name names, but we could, and then you'd know what we're talking about. But let us say that it is possible for someone, because they wrote a lot of books and they built a great big Dhamma center, and that their names are on this tricycle and this Lion's Roar magazine on a regular
I think I
basis.
know who you're referring to, but yeah.
And just because they're out teaching the Dhamma and making good money on the Dhamma doesn't mean that the people who they're teaching Dhamma to are getting the right things.
Right.
Because this guy or these people who are doing this kind of stuff are also saying that you've got to vote. They want you involved with politics. They want you to do things that go against the Dhamma, even though they are held up as the biggest Dhamma dude in the country. The most well-known, the big guys, are actually giving people advice that's against the Dhamma and against their own better nature. Trying to get people to become politically active. Okay. So this is exactly what you're talking about is that those guys who go off on a cause trying to get people politically active are always angry. The answer is yes, but they don't always display that anger, because if these people did display anger about what they're doing, their entire Dhamma flock would leave them,
Right. Right.
because they could
Well,
see the unwholesomeness finally, rather than see the unwholesomeness as, oh, you got to go vote or you got to get this done and that done. And oh, and by the way, on the way to the polls, please pay me $5,000 for the next retreat.
yes. Well, it's funny because I think I know exactly who you're talking about, and I know of another teacher in that group who
Well,
I
actually, I
used to
was
like to
making a
listen to.
composite because there's
What
more
was
than
that?
one of them out there. I was making a composite because there's more
Got
than
it.
one of them out there.
Yeah, yeah, there's a few. And it's funny because and I know you like to discuss politics too, but you don't talk about it in an activist way. You're just kind of describing things. You're not really being
I
activist
talk
about
about
it,
it
which is
about how much dukkha everybody is in.
right, right. It's very different perspective than how some of these people talk about it, which is in a very activist kind of a way. And when they go off
I
on that
never give
tangent,
advice about we ought to do this and we ought to do that. What I will give advice is we ought to stop doing this and we ought to stop doing that.
sure, and
That's the way that we practice the Dhamma, is by finding something that's unwholesome and taking it out of our lives. But we can still, from a distance, point to the dukkha with a smile,
sure.
as opposed to pointing to the dukkha over there with a frown and thoughts of, I've got work to do. I've got to go fix that too.
Well, what's funny is these teachers I'm thinking of, whenever they bring up these topics, I hear like a strain in their voice. It's like they're not displaying anger per se, but it's like their perfectly crafted, you know,
There's a
personality
plead.
just
They're pleading. They're coming from the
yes,
victim state. There's always a victim. When people say we need you to vote, that means something's wrong in my life, and if you go vote, I'll feel better.
sure, sure. And it's funny because when I first brought up this topic of the social justice people, I was thinking of, one group that I sat with that was very much all about that. And I went to just a few of their sessions and decided it wasn't for me. And the people were just miserable in that group. That's why I didn't go to more than two sessions. A friend of mine invited me, and I was very fond of my friend, and that's why I went. Um, but beyond two sessions, I was like, this does not seem like the Dhamma to me. It just didn't feel right. And I couldn't put my finger on it why yet, but it just didn't feel right. It felt like a, you know, pity party.
Well,
It felt like a big pity party, you know,
if
and
there is,
very Christian in that sense. You know,
speaking of that, there is the event that is very strongly affecting and quite buried, but certainly there, the story about the money changers in the temple as an aspect of social justice. If you see something that is so heinous and so wrong, like the bankers moving into the temple, then we've got to go do something about it. You see what I'm talking about?
yep,
Okay, this is the entire basis. That Christian ideal that Jesus, Son of God, perfect human being, drove the trash out of the temple. That's almost marching orders. So every little Christian is thinking about, where's that temple and where's those money changers? I've got job to do.
sure,
Where within Buddhism, We don't have any of that idea. There is no such thing as social justice. That even the kings would get uh, the right story from the Buddha, in the sense of this is how you handle this particular moment, rather than, oh, we've got to gird our loins and get our battle gear going and go off to trounce the money changers or whatever like that. That we do have this whole quality of social justice. In fact, you could say that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States is right there in that mentality. King George was the money changers for Benjamin Franklin.
Sure.
Okay. And so this is basically baked deep into the Western mentality, that there are jobs to be done and you're on the list. That's not the teachings of the Buddha at all. And so anyone who is trying to straddle the fence of social activism and the Dhamma are going to be in conflict within their own mind.
Right.
And so we can actually just kind of get away from that and recognize that no, the real work that needs to be done is always on the interior. And that we cannot fix the exterior. In fact, another way of looking at it is it does not belong to you. The world is not yours to manipulate. Let's go do the job that we can do. This goes exactly back with AA has what they call a prayer, the AA prayer. And I guess the only prayer about it is God is the first word. And if you take that word off, then it's no longer a prayer. Now it's a call. Okay. But God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change. And grant me the courage to change the things that I can change and the wisdom to know the difference. And therein lies the issue. Is that our society has been screaming out loud that the wisdom is you got to go fix him and then you'll feel good.
Right.
If you go fix him, you'll be okay. Or if you go fix that, you'll be okay. And this is the ignorance. The real wisdom is that let me change the things that I can change, and the only things that I can change are the things that I changed in the first place.
Sure.
All right.
So,
And so we begin to
yeah.
look at it from the fact that we can change the inside. And we don't really need courage to do that. What we really need is to remember to change it on the inside. And the first thing then that we need to change is when thoughts come up, oh, I got to go do that work out there. Oh, I got to go fix them, is to see that thought and recognize that's what needs to be changed, is the thought that there is work to do on the outside. And that when you change it, you can change it from, that's not my job and I'm okay and I really don't have any work to do at all. Let me sit here and enjoy the moment. But when we don't read that kind of stuff in Lion's War, we read calls to action instead.
Right.
So this is the point that the Dhamma is being dicked with, and it has been dicked with for centuries. But it's the real stuff never seemed to have gotten to the West. All we ever got was a dicked up version of it. And we need to get back to the original teachings of the Buddha, which means that we have to get out of our system the idea that we've got money changers to drive out. That the money changers, if there are to be driven out, they're the ones that are in the real temple anyway.
Sure. So,
The temple of our mind. So we need to drive those money changers out of the mind, which is basically the critical thinking. But let's
sure.
have nurturing thoughts. The nurturing thoughts will then be the very change that we needed the courage for. We don't really need a whole lot of courage to change our mind from being an unhappy mind to a happy mind.
Sure. So, quick question. So, let's just play through one of these scenarios. So, let's say I just come back from my morning cigar. I sit down in my chair. This very same chair I'm talking to you, and I also meditate in this chair. And I'm thinking, I pull out my phone, I start scrolling, social media, the news, whatever. I'm thinking to myself, you know, I really need to start applying for jobs, or oh, I really need to meditate. Now I can, with sati, grab that thought and say, aha, Mara, I see you.
Hmm.
There it
And I
is.
don't need anything.
And
And I
I
don't
I
need
don't need
anything.
anything. I'm just okay right here. And then I would probably look to the scrolling
Actually,
next
the
and
thing to
say,
do would be that cell phone that's in your hand, just close your eyes.
hmm,
Just close your eyes. You don't need the cell phone. You can just close your eyes and take a deep breath and get yourself back into a state of homeostasis. Take about 10 or 20 seconds. And then open your eyes, and you may have a completely different attitude about that cell phone. You may, the first thing you do is just click it off and set it down and go back and close your eyes and take another deep breath.
sure.
This is the distinction. You see that everybody thinks that they've got to go do something to meditate. That's the whole quality of it, that they've gotten so wrapped up in the idea of uh, rites, rituals, procedures, methods, places, and things to do, when basically the real practice of anapanasati is just to take a deep breath right now. When you think of it, throw that
Hmm.
stuff out. This is all there is to it. And we do that over and over again every time we remember
And ain't
that
it nice?
we do not need a formal sitting practice. It was never necessary. The Buddha never specified one.
Hmm.
What did he specify? He said, go to the forest or to an empty hut or to the foot of a tree, to a pile of straw. Guess what? You're in an empty hut right now. You're already in the empty hut. There you are. You're in seclusion. So you sit
Right.
down and you bring mindfulness to the fore. And then we mindfully breathe in long and mindfully breathe out long. There's all there is to it. You're already in that secluded place. The funny thing that's
Hmm.
really interesting about that, about a meditation retreat, is that when the Buddha recommends to go into seclusion, he means into seclusion. And what do people do when they go to a meditation retreat? They pay a lot of money and then they collect together and a whole bunch of people in a small place.
Hmm.
Then what do? They pretend to be in seclusion. And yet all of this sensory input is coming in, the odors, the coughs, the kneecaps, all of that kind of stuff is there. We're not in seclusion at all. We don't get away from it at all. About the best thing that we can hope for in that regard is closing our eyes. That's the only seclusion that they get when they go to a meditation retreat.
Hmm.
But the real issue is to get real seclusion so that you can get not only secluded from all of the world of a meditation retreat and New York, but then we can get, first we get the mind out of New York, and then we get New York out of the mind. Two-step process, two
Hmm.
kinds of seclusions. One is the seclusion is get the mind out of New York by getting it in seclusion. And then the second one, the deeper seclusion, is to get New York out of the mind.
Hmm.
Well, social activists, they've got New York in the mind all the time. They're
Right.
trying to fix New York. They're not trying to get away from it and get the mind into a state of peace and calm and happiness. So another way of saying of getting New York out of the mind is getting the criticism out of the mind and getting into a nurturing mind. Everything is okay, everything is fine. wholesome thoughts, one wholesome thought after another wholesome thought after another wholesome thought. This is the right way to practice.
Hmm.
And when you have only wholesome thoughts and you have thoughts about a job, then those getting a job kind of thoughts are going to be very wholesome.
Hmm.
But right now, your thoughts of getting a job are not wholesome at all. They're unwholesome in the sense of you've got to go get a job. You should be working. Those are
So,
unwholesome.
so what would a wholesome version of that look like? A wholesome version of getting a job thoughts.
Wow, that looks really interesting. Maybe I'll go apply to that job. That looks like something really like. I would really like to do that.
Hmm. Or let's say it's like updating my resume, which needs to get done, right? So might be, you know what? It'll be fun to add a few lines to my resume here.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be wholesome?
Yeah,
Yep.
right.
Yeah.
Rather
Or it
than,
might.
oh, I can't get a job without that resume. I've got to go get it done. Oh, well, go do it now. And we're not in the mood to do it. We do things that when we're not in the mood to do it, we need to change the mood we're in.
Sure. So you change the mood first, then you can do the thing.
And then you can do the thing.
Okay. Cool. Uh, good. Good to know. Anyhow,
And
I'm
when you, but here's the point though, that after you've changed your mood, then you may not want to do the thing
right.
because you're too happy without doing it already. Or you
I
can do it
I've
because you
found
know
that.
that it needs to be done. An example of that is that uh, visas, it has to be done.
Right.
But I have a choice about am I going to do the visa happily, easily, joyfully, or I'm going to make some mistakes. Am I going to not want to do it? Am I going to be afraid that I doesn't have all the paperwork and all of this kind of stuff? Okay. So those
Right.
are the two ways of getting a visa. The third way is to really screw it up and don't go. And some people try that, but that's definitely going to be a lot of dukkha. And so it has to be done. The question is, how are we going to feel about doing it?
As good as you can. I mean, you probably feel great because you're a pro at feeling good.
Well,
You'd
it's a
probably love
skill to
it.
be developed. It's a skill to be developed. There's
So what
nothing
do you
special.
so what do you tell yourself? Like, man, I can't wait to get this visa done. This is gonna be great. Like, you
Well,
say
right
like
now the
I'm
point
gonna go to the
is
government office. It's gonna be the best time I've ever had my whole life. This is gonna be wonderful. Well, like, I'd love to hear. What do you tell yourself? You know.
well, those are the kinds of things that you would tell yourself. So
Hmm.
that's it. Or another way of would be, wow, guess what? I don't have to do visas very often, and right now I don't have to do it.
Hmm.
You see, the thing of it is that people will think about the visa weeks or months before it has to be done.
Right.
And then they're just wasting their time thinking about work that has to be done, and they can't even do it yet.
Right.
This is basically then getting into the woeful state of the Ashura, where we're all dressed up and no place to go. Thinking about doing the visa, and now is not the time to go do the visa.
Right.
We're thinking about it anyway. Or thinking about going to the bank in the night when the bank is closed. You can't go to the bank. Why think about going to the bank? You can't go to the bank now.
Right.
But we think about going to the bank anyway, or we're laying in bed. We don't have any intention of turning the computer on to write that email, but we're still thinking about that email,
Right.
thinking about work that needs to be done instead of enjoying the fact that we don't have to do it right now.
Right.
And so when we get ourselves into the state to where we can really enjoy the moment, then we can take that enjoyment of the moment and put that into the email or and do the email then when we're all ready. But the other way of doing it that most people are into is they don't want to do the email. They think about doing the email anyway, and then they don't do the email.
Mm.
So the style that we're talking about here is don't spend your time thinking about the email that you're not doing. Spend your time thinking about you. You don't have to do that email right now. Everything is marvelous. Everything is great. And when you get yourself into a really, really good state, then maybe the thought will come by, well, I can do that email now. I'm on top of it.
Right.
So this is a way that we can begin to practice the Dhamma and still live in the world, is because we don't live in the world all the time, that we keep coming back to seclusion and getting away from the world over and over and over and over again until the world becomes less and less and less important. Nothing is really important at all other than your own well-being. And so let's let that be the object of our meditation, is our own well-being.
Mm.
That's why we go from one wholesome thought to the next to the next, and you cannot fix the world.
Right.
In fact, there's been quite a number of people who have tried to fix the world, and look what they did to it instead. I mean, Stalin worked really hard to fix the world.
Hitler. Yep.
Hitler, he worked really hard to fix the world.
Yep.
Mohammed, Big Mo, he worked really hard to fix the world, or at least his part of it. And look what
Right.
happened. Islam.
Right. It's funny though. Gandhi, he tried to fix the world in a sense, and it
Well, a
worked
lot of
out
people
quite
will
well.
point out that a lot of stuff went wrong with Gandhi's trying to fix the world. A lot of people died.
I'd say Gandhi prevented a lot more deaths than there might have
But
been
we don't
without him.
know. We
We
just
don't know
don't
for
know,
sure.
do we?
We don't
We
know,
just
but
don't know.
that's the
But
big
we
argument, that he
but we do
saved a lot of
know that
lives. Yeah.
he didn't apply something that was new. He applied something that was old, which was nonviolent, in your
Yep.
face.
Yep.
Okay. The only difference between Gandhi and the Buddha was that Buddha was nonviolent and took a hike, and Gandhi was nonviolent in the face of the government.
Yep. Yep. He
Okay.
also took a hike. He took a hike to the salt thing. You know.
He finally figured that out. Well, yeah, it depends upon how you mean by taking a hike. Yeah, the salt
Yeah.
run. Know about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. No, Gandhi was amazing. He's a big inspiration for me. Um, he really um, just through his own moral practice and his own power of personality, he was able to really change the world in a very positive way. Without ever lifting a finger to harm anyone.
Really? What would India be like today if it were still part of the British Empire? What would the British Empire be today if India were part of it?
Um,
How do you know that what Gandhi did was beneficial?
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we'll never know for sure, but
You
you
won't.
know,
That's
you
the whole point. So why speculate about it?
well, you can make the argument that um, in the Indian people having greater self-determination is just grants them a dignity that they did not have when they were part of the British Empire.
Pardon?
So, if you're a colony, and you don't have the ability to self-determine
I'm
your own
not
fate,
a colony.
you're not. But I'm saying, like, if you're part of
Well,
a
you just
colony,
said that. No, no, that's still a mentality. That's still a mentality.
which is
Looking
much
for
easier,
advantages and disadvantages. And in fact, the first statement that you made was an argument could be made. And my immediate response to that is, but we don't have to argue about anything. We don't have to piddle with Gandhi. That was 70 years ago.
sure,
Okay. We don't have to worry about that. We don't have to fix the world. The world is not broken.
right? The world's perfect.
No, I didn't say that. I just said it's not broken. There's not, okay, there is no world calling you on the phone saying, please help me.
Right. Still fun to talk about, though.
It's not. The only thing when you say it's fun to talk about means it's fun to make plans for work that needs to be done.
Hmm.
When in fact there is nothing that needs to be done. All the work that needs to be done is to make the mind wholesome. Once your mind is wholesome, then the way you see the world will be seeing the world in a wholesome way. Right now, you see the world as broken, when in fact it's your own mind that's broken.
I don't see the world as broken.
Well, you're wanting to fix it.
Kind of, you know.
Yeah, okay. You want a job. That's you're wanting for someone to go walking into some organization surreptitiously and spread the Dhamma.
That was a joke I made. That was
Mhm.
like I said that'd be a good movie. You know, it would be that'd be a funny movie. I would enjoy watching that.
But the world would be better off without those kind of movies.
Um, would it? You know,
Yeah.
maybe if it could teach some Dhamma, you know, maybe that would make for a good world. You know,
But the
better world.
people
I don't
don't
know.
want the Dhamma. They don't need the Dhamma. Those who want and need the Dhamma should find out that they don't need it anyway. That we need to stop needing things
Sure.
to become satisfied with the way things are. This is a hard lesson to teach. Over and over and over again, we got to teach the lesson, get your own mind wholesome, and everything else will take care of itself. That's right, built right into that haiku. No place to go, nothing to do, and the spring comes, and the grass grows all by itself.
Right. And
Biden does not need your help, and neither does Donald Trump, and neither does Boris Spassky or anybody. But they don't need us.
well, it's funny, you know, and what I'm about to say is in agreement with you. But you know, a big part of my personality, and this is another thing that similar to what I was discussing
You are
earlier.
not your personality, you know.
I know, but like a big part of it has been constant self-improvement all the time.
Hmm.
You know,
Well, when are you
and
going to be improved enough to where you can be confident that you're improved, that you're okay
never,
already?
never complete until I've got, you know, maybe a bunch of money, you know, trophy wife, you know, all of that. That would be the
No,
story
wait a
I'd tell
minute, wait a
myself, you
minute,
know.
wait a minute, wait a minute.
What
What was the original goal in the first place?
was contentedness, you know, and just a sense of accomplishment and this
Okay.
and that sort of a
Is
thing, you
money
know.
necessary? The people who have a lot of
No,
money, they
none
still
of
feel
that.
that it's
None of
not
that.
enough. They want more, more, more,
None of
more,
that is
more.
necessary. None of it is. I know it's not. You know, I'm just discussing like my prior beliefs, you know.
Okay.
And you know, and yet what's funny is if for a long enough time you tell yourself something, it becomes like a mantra. Like it's like a child, you know, with his little toy, his little rattle that he likes to play with to calm him down. You know, of oh, you know, go do this, go to the gym, so maybe you can get that trophy wife, you know, or go apply for a job so you can get a nice house. So, you know, it's like a little rattle, you know, and I know I don't need the rattle. You know, I know there's that it's incorrect view. Like I feel like I am aware of this quite
Well, we
well.
can use that. We can use that. Okay. Let's use that rattle.
Yeah,
Now, what you need to do is to recognize every time that that rattle goes off, to catch it rattling, that you don't just let it rattle, 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 rattle while you got it kind of there, but you're not paying any attention to it. That as soon as that rattling starts, you put a stop to it.
right.
You put a stop to it. Okay, the rattle is back and forth, which is good, bad, up, down, the critical mind.
Right.
That rattle is nothing but the rattling of the critical mind. We need to
Right.
catch that stuff and put a stop to it and tell yourself wholesome things like everything is going to be all right, everything is fine, we don't need the rattle, everything is good, no place to go, nothing to do. The spring come and the grass will grow all by itself. The world will take care of itself. Does not need my help.
Indeed. All right, Dhammarato, I think we've exhausted this one for today. But
No, we haven't, but we've gotten
we
tired.
haven't. Well, yeah, just for today. Just for
We're
today.
exhausted. The topic is not.
That is not. No. We'll continue on next time. So hopefully in
Okay.
a few days.
So
So,
you make sure now that any thoughts about fixing the world come up, you catch those things.
right,
But you give yourself jobs to do. Catch that. If you
right.
have the thought you should be meditating, the answer to that is, yep.
Even the one that just came up of I need to go to bed, I need to brush my teeth. No, it's okay. I'm enjoying just right now, just having my conversation with my
Mhm.
friend and teacher Dhammarato here, and this is very nice. And taking a nice deep breath,
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Robert. We'll see you soon.
Yep. See you soon. Kapkin Kap.
Pepkin Cup.